if you can take us back a little bit to that moment when you became chairman, how hard was it for you to create a culture of positive change?
My first few years as chairman was committed and dedicated to changing the culture in the company. I inherited a board, for example, that must have have an average age of 85. We had a few directors who were participating. Several of them had to be helped into the boardroom because they could no longer walk freely. Some of them came and sat down and fell asleep. Others didn't hear too well. But when it came to making changes, they all woke up and ensured that no change took place. So the first 4 or 5 years were spent in trying to figure out how to graciously ease them out of the company. And finally, I'm pleased to say that most of them followed a trend of, if you made them an offer that was attractive enough, they agreed to move. And then 5 years later, one could sit down and try to create a new culture, a group that was more customer-oriented and attempted to be more nimble-footed than it had been in the past. The first that comes to mind is we developed, as you know, a small car called the Nano. We decided that we would establish the factory in Calcutta because industry had moved away from the eastern part of India, and we thought a revolutionary car could be in a place that brought employment back to eastern India. We unfortunately got embroiled in a political battle between the government of West Bengal and an aspiring political leader, a lady, who vowed that she would not allow a single car to come out of this factory. And the war of words went on between her and me. The factory was almost 85% complete, and I had to take a decision that, given the fact that we had dead bodies thrown on the site, we had shootings, we had people beaten up, that I couldn't look at our employees in their eye and say that you'll work in this factory. So I decided that we would move. And we decided that in the dead of night, and we started moving a completed car plant over the next several days. I think with about 1,400 large tractor-trailer trucks, we moved the plant out and ended up in Gujarat, which is Mr. Modi's state. We lost a lot in that period of 1 year where we rebuilt that plant. To this day, one will never know whether we did the right thing or not. I personally believe that about 37 or 40 people in our hotel were shot and killed for no reason. And then it became an issue that, do you stand by and let this happen, or do you go into the midst of what was like a war zone and stand with your employees and go to the homes of people who were killed, and I chose to do the latter, to go every day to the hospitals to to look at the people who were injured. And there again, that leaves a lasting impression on you in terms of what happened, what could have been done to avoid it, and how could you deal with this? What was the best form of support you could give to your people? I think those two instances stand out as being challenging moments in one's career. First of all, there was a great deal of misunderstanding in the UK. There were, and this permeated into the workforce also. There was a feeling that this was a ploy for an Indian company to buy Jaguar Land Rover, close down the plants in England, move the factories to India, and make Birmingham into a real estate project or a set of, I'm saying this not facetiously because it was said to me, of tandoori chicken restaurants in the Midlands. And I had to stand in front of the workers and assure them that A, Tatas were not in the restaurant business. We may have some hotels, but we didn't have a chain of restaurants, and that was not our intention. It was also not our intention to saddle JLR with cheap cars from India. And then what we said, which is what we tried to do, was to say our plan is to leave you alone, to support you, and work with you in returning these two brands to their original glory. What's gratifying is that the workforce in JLR did exactly that. They with pride, worked towards making the car company closer to what it was in the days of its heyday. And I think they've done admirably well, and the management of JLR, I think, are really the heroes of the day.
That you felt all alone when you were the chairman of the Tata Group. And the fact that most of us will probably be leaders in the future, what can we expect?
Oh, I think there are many moments that most CEOs or chairmen feel that they're alone. It's almost an occupational hazard that you live with, where you either can't confide because it's not appropriate, or you stand alone against a tide of views or pushes where you don't feel that you need to be compromised. There was a time when one felt that the fabric of India, and the ethical fabric of India, was being eroded. And most companies, including ours, had to face an issue of dealing with this by participating in subjective activities, be they doing favors for people or actually paying. And the few times that we were approached and stood our ground and did not do that made me go home at night with this wonderful feeling that we didn't succumb. And anybody that says that you can't operate in India without paying, I think needs to look at us as an example, because we grew, and we grew from about 5 billion to 100 billion without participating in anything subjective. So industry can grow in India, and you don't need to succumb. And I think that's the one thing I would say that was probably the loneliest moment or set of moments that one has, and one feels pleased that you were able to go through that period and not compromise your ideals.
For a second, you've said before that I don't believe in taking right decisions. I take decisions, then I make them right. How did you come to build that philosophy?
I'm sorry, I'm going to upset you, but Facebook or Twitter that made that statement, it was never made by me.
That's not you. Well, that's awkward.
And so it's been a default statement. You come to know of it when people read them back to you. Mm-hmm. And there's no remedial action that you can take with the social media.
True.